Hello and welcome on to another episode of the ISO Ball Podcast with your host, Derek Terrio, your place to learn about the NBA on and off the court. And we're back with a quick episode as we've been off for too long. So, like I said on the last pod, we're going to talk the NBA trade that went down, and that was the Jimmy Butler trade headed to the Sixers. And to join me for that is frequent guest and good friend, Nick Raponi. Nick, welcome back.
Thank you for having me on again, Derek.
As always, my friend. So, This was quite the deal. I was actually in the parking lot going to the Raptors Knicks game when I heard about this deal in the car. It happened about 1 p.m. Eastern when I found out, and I was just trying to figure it all out in my head and didn't have time to respond to it. So we're here, and Jimmy Butler's been traded, like I said, to the Philadelphia 76ers, along with 16th pick in the 2016 draft, Justin Patton, and he is heading over to the Minnesota Timberwolves in exchange for Dario Saric, Robert Covington, Jared Bayless, and a 2022 second-round pick. Nick, what are your initial thoughts here?
It's a shame they didn't get a first included in this package. I'll start with that.
Meaning the Sixers?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, meaning Minnesota.
Oh, sorry, meaning Minnesota. Go
Minnesota.
ahead. Sorry, my apologies.
I think Minnesota, it would have been nice if they were able to get Saric, Covington, and a first.
Correct.
That would have been nice for them, but unfortunately, Butler's antics, it lowered his value. It really did. So Minnesota, it started from what he did to this franchise. I mean, Minnesota is not a good franchise. The Timberwolves, I'm not going to say they're a shining franchise and star and, consistent success. They're not. But he really set them back. If you look back, from the start of it, from when they made that trade with Chicago to acquire him, ooh.
I do remember that trade went down during draft day to the Timberwolves, and if we're reminded of that trade, that was a trade saw Jimmy Butler go to the Timberwolves along with Justin Patton in exchange for.
It was the draft.
The draft rights to Justin Patton, who had been picked at the time or hadn't been picked yet. I wasn't sure.
Think he had.
Okay, so. No. Anyway, I would think it was the 16th pick in exchange for Chris Dunn, Zach LaVine, and the 7th pick, who ended up being Lauri Markkanen.
So, right off the bat, you look at that, and
not hard to tell who won that trade at this point.
Yeah, they Minnesota gave up a lot for one season of Jimmy Butler, and not just one season of Jimmy Butler. One season of Jimmy Butler and an offseason of chaos that Jimmy Butler brought.
Correct.
The start of the season, no chemistry, just Jimmy Butler just set them back so far in one season. They gave up so much, and realistically, Saric and Covington is really not deserving of, it's not, the value is not equal there, if you know what I'm saying. Considering, looking back to how much they gave up, considering the Chicago deal, that's a lot.
Yeah, I agree. And I'll just say a couple things on that. The one thing that Wolves fans, I think, will push back on your sentiment that Jimmy Butler kind of set them back is that he did help them get to a playoff series, which they hadn't been in 14 some odd years. So that had to mean something to this franchise, I got to believe. However, is that worth everything?
No.
Getting one playoff spot and losing in 5 games in the first round? That's another question. I would agree with you. I don't think that's worth it on that part.
That season. Okay, what were you saying?
Yeah, one other thing I want to add about this trade is that when you're trading for Jimmy Butler, you're not just trading for, Jimmy Butler, especially in the Sixers case. You're not just trading for Jimmy Butler as a player. You're trading for Jimmy Butler, the obligation. And by what you mean by that is that if you're going to have Jimmy Butler, you're going to have him for 5 years, $190 million contract, or he's out.
No, I know.
Or he's out.
Yeah.
So he thinks he can get that, and whether or not a team is going to give him that is another question. But that's what he thinks he's worth. And from what it's worth, I think I saw reports that it was come to a verbal agreement that he's going to sign the extension, and that Philly and him had an agreement prior to that saying, hey, if we're not doing this unless you sign the deal. Yes. And they've agreed to that. That's verbal. Things can change, but that's what it's seen.
100%.
That's what I see it
exactly.
as.
And Jimmy's the type of guy I think things can change with.
Definitely.
I'm a big Jimmy Butler fan. I am. He is not what he did in Minnesota.
And it works the other way too. Just as maybe disloyal as Jimmy might be, the team could just be as disloyal.
No, 100%.
If it goes awry, and maybe Philly's out in the first round, and Jimmy's a bad force in the locker room, they can just say, okay, we ain't bringing you back. We're declining your $19 million option, and you go look for a deal.
100%. But I think at that point, well, I'm not going to say it's mutual. Obviously, he's going to want the bag. But at that point, I think
that's what he's after.
If there's some sort of like locker, if he destroys it, it's going to be his third locker room that in 18 months the guy's going to destroy if he destroys another locker room. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, at least this one won't have Tom Thibodeau in it.
Yeah, exactly.
That'll be the only difference.
Yeah. Yeah. But the one thing about like Jimmy too, when we go back to that season of him, yeah, he brought them to the playoffs. He had 22 points a game. He was an all-star. He always came to play with that good D.
For sure. And let's not talk shit about Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler has
Jimmy
heart.
Butler's buckets.
Jimmy Butler is one of those guys similar to that of a guy like CP3, similar to that of like other attitudes. Like even you can throw Kobe in that conversation. They're not necessarily fun guys
winners.
to play with.
They're just winners.
They're winners.
Yeah.
Winning all the time isn't fun.
No.
I think like people get that mixed up, and like that's where I'm on Jimmy Butler's side, and I'm not on his side for everything. But the one thing I'm going to say is that there's very few people that find a way to be true winners and to be the nice guy at the same time.
100%.
And I think that just is underrated. So I just had to get that out there.
No, I definitely agree with you there. Yeah, but then like I completely agree. But then you look at that season, great season. You move to the playoff, like you said, out in 5 games. Yeah, they were matched up with Houston, but Jimmy put up 15 points per game in the playoffs. That's inexcusable. That's 7 points per game less than what he put up in the season.
Yeah, that's very true. Things change. Things do change. That rocket switching. Yeah, that rocket switching scheme proves like it made them very vulnerable. And again, we talked before. Even we got on. Towns had 9 shots in that series.
Yep.
You know, if Jimmy's a leader, he's got to be able to. Like I know he's not a point guard, and that's not his responsibility. But he's got to be able to say, "Hey, we got Karl Anthony Towns. We got to get him shots, Tibbs. Yep. Like we got to get him shots. Like find him a way to a cross screen. Some ducking, something. He didn't get anything in that series, and I'm not saying Jimmy Butler's to blame for that necessarily, but for the fact that he didn't, be his normal self to open things up on double teams and stuff for a guy like Towns, for a guy like Wiggins, doesn't really help this case either.
I agree with you. I definitely agree with you. But like now, it's like, are we gonna look at the way? It's great for Philly. Philly didn't really. I think most people are looking at it like, well, let's talk Minnesota. Philly, I think it's great for them because, like we spoke about, Minnesota went through that terrible offseason where they got knocked out in the playoffs, and then Jimmy declined that 4-year, $100 million extension, said, I'm going to get more next offseason.
Yeah, exactly. And then he wanted that 5th year.
Exactly.
And that was the thing. He wanted that stability.
Exactly. And then there was all that stuff with him apparently demanding a trade, and then Nick Wiggins came out with the hallelujah.
Yeah, the hallelujah tweet. And then
Steven Jackson came in, and it was a fiasco. And
even Jimmy Butler running the hills saying, keep that same energy. That was one of my favorite ones of that whole song. I laughed at it.
It was incredible. Jimmy Butler, like I said, Jimmy Butler's entertaining. He's fantastic. Yeah. But it was not good what happened with him in the Timberwolves.
Absolutely
it was not a good. Yeah. And like after that, there was just no chemistry. He erupted in practice, went crazy. What was he saying?
Took the 3rd stringers and beat the first team.
Going crazy. What was that like? Fuck you can't win without me or something like that? Yeah,
exactly. Yes. He's telling the GM, like, you can't win games without me. You need me, sort of this sort of stuff. And like,
and then we went with Rachel Nichols that night.
Yeah, exactly. and then he booked the interview, from what I understand, like well in advance of that practice. Okay. But the antics were just kind of, had some unfortunate timing considering the timing of his interview.
Or maybe fortunate.
And that was that's the other side, right? Or was it fortunate? Yeah. And that's what
unfortunate
you have to
for the Wolves.
Yeah,
but then
exactly.
The team's gotten off to a bad start because I think not a lot of chemistry.
Towns
Jimmy Clare doesn't want to be there. Towns hasn't been great for sure. You can't blame it all on Jimmy. But Clare doesn't want to be there. And then they just get that Sarge Covington for no first. But at the same time, Minnesota got screwed by Jimmy Butler. But if you look at that, go back to that deal with the Chicago Bulls. Before you make that deal, you say, Jimmy Butler, do we have an extension? And you get him to sign paper. Mm-hmm. And you get that extension. You make sure you get that extension. And if you don't have that extension guaranteed, you do not make that deal. So I blame Minnesota, but at the same time, you can't expect Jimmy's value to plummet that much for him to be like that.
Yeah, I mean, and there is a number of factors. Again, I think the fact that there's not that many teams out there that are going to want that rental is the problem. He's, like you mentioned, he's just coming off these antics. And
they're going to want the rental. They're just not going to give a lot for the rental.
Well, exactly. And that's the point, right? And that...
Well, maybe they want the rental. I don't even know. At this point, I don't know.
Well, do you, though? Well, and this is what I made the case on a couple podcasts ago, is that do you want that guy that's coming off this crazy antics in the Minnesota locker room as a rental into your current locker room? especially if you're on the way to a championship. You know, I can't even think of teams off the top of my head.
If I'm
but
on
like,
my way to a championship,
do you want Jimmy
perhaps,
Butler
yeah.
in your locker room?
Perhaps, because he's
well,
a
that's
winner.
the thing. Yeah, exactly. I agree. But he might not mesh with the guys in that locker room. Like, if he went to Miami...
I think if there's guys that want to win, Jimmy Butler's going to be fine.
I agree.
I don't know,
I totally
but
agree.
I feel like that's what
I totally agree. I think maybe I see it a little bit more from a pessimistic view. But from what I was getting at that's even bigger than the antics is that, look, unless you're you're trading for Jimmy Butler as a long-term asset, that means you're giving him the 5 years 190. That means you're committing to the $40 million player option in the 5th year. Mm-hmm. That's what you're committing to. That's what I mean when you're committing to Jimmy Butler as an obligation. That's why the offers, I don't think, were as big, in my opinion.
Definitely. But is Saric and Covington, that deal right there, so just Saric and Covington for Butler, on a 1-year rental, it's not the worst.
Yeah.
For Philly, Sarge's a good player. Covington's a good player. I'm not doubting either of those guys. But
and remember, you had him as one of your top defensive players last year, if
Covington.
I remember.
Exactly. I'm a big fan, and I like Sarge too. But the impact Jimmy Butler can have when he's surrounded by guys that want to win, I just think the reward is so high. Yeah,
and I think it's a good time to mention that they're not done being the Sixers. They're not done here making moves. They're looking to grab some shooters. With this trade, it creates a $2.5 million trade exception, which they can then go out and use to go and sign a guy for the minimum, perhaps at the veterans minimum. And they still have a ton of space here. They're just about $1 million over the cap. And they still have their room exception as well for $4.49 million. And that's the same. That's what Cousins got.
No, that's exactly.
That's what Cousins got, right? So I mean, if you're able to go out and get a guy on the buyout market,
you're not getting Cousins, of course.
No,
but like someone.
That's not what I'm insinuating.
I know.
But that's what I'm saying. So look for them to go out and get a shooter. Shooters that Kyle Korver might be a good fit. A J.R. Smith perhaps could do something for this team, although he has his defensive lapses. So does Korver, for what it's worth.
Speaking of Korver, I just going a little off topic here. We're gonna get back to it, but did you hear that stuff with Cleveland?
Yeah, I talked.
LeBron got traded,
I talked about it a little bit as Cleveland was one of my most disappointing teams. Yeah, I mentioned that. There was the reports about Colin Sexton saying he doesn't know how to play. I mean, I don't know what that means exactly. Like, does he not know?
Fundamental basketball. The IQ.
Well, does he not know how to get into actions? Like, can he not set a good screen? Like, is he like I don't know what they mean by saying he doesn't know how to play. Like, that's the part I don't understand. Like, does he not know when to cut?
The NBA the way you played basketball in the NBA. I don't know. I just
haven't seen anything. Like, I haven't watched many Cavs, but I haven't seen anything definitive as in I don't want to play. In fact, he walls up on defense. Have you seen his
No, he's good defensively. I know.
No, I'm not even going to go that far. I don't think he's great defensively, but he tries very hard.
The effort's there.
The effort is there. On every almost every possession, and I'll give him that. But I don't know what they mean by that. I just don't know.
I'm not too sure either. But the thing I was talking about with Korver was this how if LeBron left, Dan Gilbert said,
"Oh yeah, I want to be traded.
They agreed to it. I'll let you out. That's and he backed out on it.
Yeah, I heard about
bad.
that.
We can get back to Butler and stuff. I just felt that so
bad. I definitely did hear about that. That's I mean we'll have to do another top 5 teams in the dust podcast for that one, because that could be a good one too. But back to this Butler trade here for the Sixers. Again, they're going to look to add some shooting. A guy like Korver, a guy like J.R. Smith. I can't really think of any other potential guys on the buyout market. I mean, a Trevor Ariza could really help this team on the buyout market if the Suns say we're done.
We'll see it. When the buyout market comes, we'll see exactly what's gonna happen. But
very true, and the trade deadline too.
Exactly. Philly is. We talked about how Minnesota got set back so far by Jimmy Butler, and how they were dumb to not sign the extension when they traded for the Bulls, and how Minnesota, how it's been awful. But for Philly, this is good. I really think so. If you look at this lineup,
I have some questions though, for what it's worth. I have some questions.
For sure, they're not the best team in the East, but they got better. I think they got better.
They increased their ceiling. I can't doubt you there. I'm questioning their shooting. I really am. Robert Covington, a guy shooting at a high, and I was getting there. Covington shooting at a high 30s. Sarge got off to a slow start this year, but he's going to come around. He's an excellent power forward, especially on the offensive end. And you lose those two guys, and now you're thinking of the shooters going down the list here. You got JJ Redick, who is a pure shooter. So Simmons is not a pure shooter.
Simmons is not a shooter.
Well, there you go. Yeah. He's a non-shooter. Good point. Joel Embiid is a I know what you mean. Yeah,
He's not a guy you can rely on.
Not a 3-point shooter you're going to rely on. A guy like T.J. McConnell you can't rely on.
Nope.
Wilson Chandler is very spotty. Outside of Landry Shamet and J.J. Redick and, your occasional, spot-up looks from maybe some other guys like Mike Muscalo or whatever, where is the shooting coming from on this team?
Jimmy.
Where is the space? Well, but he hasn't been a traditional catch-and-shoot guy. He's been a pick-and-roll, get those post touches and be able to shoot over the top and make those mid-rangers and get to the paint and the line.
Okay, but...
I haven't seen
what you're trying to argue with.
I haven't seen the catch and shoot ability yet from Jimmy, and I'm not saying it won't happen. I'm saying I haven't seen it, and that's why I have questions.
I agree. Hey, that's a very good point. But I think what Jimmy gives you all in all, you can afford to lose that shooting.
Oh, and Marco Fultz is a non-shooter. Did you see his free throws the other day?
Goodness.
Oh my goodness, it was ridiculous.
Slipped out of my hand.
Yeah, exactly. And dude, there was a clip of him shooting a free throw before. It was perfect. It was a week ago. I retweeted it. It was a week ago. I was like, what happened? And then I read, him and Drew Hanlon are no longer on speaking terms. No longer on speaking terms is what Alex Kennedy from Hoops Hype reported.
So this is what Markel Fultz says to do. Yeah. So something happens. So to spite Drew Hanlon fixing his mechanics, he's going to go back to his old mechanics? Is that what they're trying to say?
Drew Hanlon literally said, nah, you pissed me off, I'm taking my shot back. He literally took his shot back.
And Markel's just shooting like an idiot.
Exactly, because he's back doing the same stuff. He took his shot. Drew Hanlon's like, I want my shot back. He took his shot back.
And he gave it to him.
And he's like, here, take this.
It's like Aqib Talib and Michael Crabtree in the chain. Just took it right from him. And there's nothing he can do.
Oh my goodness, that is hilarious. Sorry, I got sidetracked on this Fultz thing. But, on a more serious note on Fultz, he could be a guy that could be involved in some trades in a buy low scenario at this point, where he's got just enough value, at 19-20, where there still might be something there, but at the same time, you're not getting number one pick value, number one overall pick value out of him. So there's a window there for the Sixers that might be interesting.
You do not make the deal, because I think personally there's still something there. Whether he's not going to be a shooter. He's never going to be a shooter. But I think there's going to be something there. He's not going to give you first overall pick value.
Never.
But I think he's going to give you more than what his current value sits at down the line. So I think you hold on to it because he was a first overall pick. The value you're going to get for a first overall pick, and it's only a year and a bit down the line, like, it's not worth it. Hold on to Fultz.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. And when you have a first overall pick invested in a guy in 2 years, it's tough to get rid of him.
Unless you get something like
good. I'm talking. Think about how much they invested in Fultz, though.
No, I know that's what I mean.
So that's 2 first-round picks.
So that's why that's exactly it. So that's why you're not going to give up on this guy so early.
That's true. That's true. I think I overlooked that aspect. That's a very good point. That's probably enough for you to just close that discussion right away. I kind of agree with you there. But yeah, like I said, I just want to go back to on the court. I just don't think the Sixers team has enough shooting right now. While I do think Jimmy Butler's ability, maybe stagger him and Simmons, that might be a good idea to have one on the floor at all times, and maybe just like beginning of the first five.
But they can be on the floor at the same time. They can.
That's what I mean.
I don't think that'll be an issue.
I'm not saying it won't either, but maybe in spots. First 5 minutes of the first quarter, and maybe last 6 or 7 or 6 minutes of the fourth.
That would be good.
You know what I mean? And just have them, him, Embiid, and Simmons on the floor at the same time. I think that could be good, and surrounding him with any 2 shooters at that point would be good for them, whether it be Wilson Chandler or otherwise. So, so I think that could be good. We'll see how that lineup potentially works. Let's talk about the on-court for the Wolves here. We really haven't talked too much about them. Yeah. You think this takes them right out of the playoff mix? 100%.
In the West, yes, they're out. They said in this trade, and that's what makes this trade even worse for me. You don't get a first-round pick, and you said, we want something to win now. You got Sarge and Covington, which is going to help you win now, but not really that much, considering how much you lost with Butler. And you don't get anything in the future out of it. I mean, you get Sarge and Covington for the future, for sure. But...
And I just want to caveat on that 2022 second-round pick. That's the year the high school kids come in. Now, I don't know if you're going to be picking a high school kid in the second round at this point in drafted potential, but it's a bigger pool for you to pick from, and it's a more valuable pick.
Exactly. It's a great point.
So that's just something to consider. Not that it has a big merit,
but it's a good point.
Yeah,
definitely.
So,
yeah, I
think about takes it out.
They're out.
But
they're out.
Okay, but
what they have on the court right now, it's not a playoff product in the West.
I agree.
In the East, it's a playoff product.
Yeah.
In the West, it's not.
I tend to agree, and I think the East is a little bit underrated at this point. There's a
It
lot
is.
of there's a lot of
It
good
is.
Eastern Conference teams at this point.
It's a lot of competitive Eastern Conference teams. Not good.
Let me ask you a different question here. You're saying that Minnesota is out of the playoff picture with this move? Does that say more about Jimmy or more about Towns and Wiggins? That they're unable to carry this team to an 8 seed. They're unable to compete with the bottom tier of the West to get to, come to the surface and be, a 7 or 8 seed. You don't think that says anything about Towns and Wiggins, ability, and especially how much the organization invested in them? I mean, they gave both of these guys max deals,
No.
and now we're saying with the loss of Jimmy Butler that these two max guys can't take you to an 8 seed in the West. That's what we're saying.
I don't think it's a knock on... Okay, it's a knock on both, but I don't think it's a huge knock to Towns because I think Towns is still pulling his weight for the most part. I think it's a major
I
knock
hope
to
he
Mr.
improves this
Andrew.
season because he hasn't been great to start, but I don't think
he's
it'll
gonna
continue.
Improve. He'll improve, no
Yeah.
doubt about that. What I'm
I
saying
think he
is,
will too.
my point is here is Towns is not the problem. Wiggins is the problem. Andrew Wiggins is not a good basketball player.
Do you know how hard that is to say as Canadian fans who saw him go number one, who love Canada basketball, who love the fact that Canada is now a bigger part of the NBA? Dude, Anthony Bennett, Andrew Wiggins, there's been some flameouts from
Tristan,
Canada. Are we counting Simbular as a Canadian?
But he was an high pick.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, he's not. He's not really a flameout. I can't give him that.
No. If we're talking high picks that were bad for Canadians,
I mean, Stauskas went 6 overall, I believe.
That was not that.
That wasn't it. I still like Stauskas, and I think he's doing a good job off the bench for the Blazers. But yeah.
Canadian basketball is looking up right now, though.
Oh yeah. Oh dude. If we just want to quickly, I know. Sorry, we're getting off topic here. Canada basketball is great, and you're probably listening to this podcast if you're from Canada, for what it's worth.
Yeah.
Right now, at least.
Yeah.
So just on the topic of Canada basketball, let's name off some names that could be on this list. Okay.
Let's start with Gonzaga and
Okay.
Kelly Olynyk.
Sure, Kelly Olynyk, a great one. Corey Joseph, Tristan Thompson, R.J. Barrett.
Let's go through this. Let's go through the lineup. Let's go through. Okay.
I don't know if I can do that.
I think we can do it easily.
I'm gonna have to pull up the roster here.
We got some. We got some time. Okay, so at point guard, we got
Jamal Murray.
There you go. We got Jamal, and we got shooting guard. Who we got at 2? Where's Jamal?
I don't know. Or maybe Dylan Brooks actually.
Dylan Brooks would be a
I don't know if you can play an R.J. Barrett at the 2.
No, maybe. Pull up the roster to see. Pull up the roster to see what our options are right now, because I think. Okay, I know.
Because I liked a tweet the other day, and the reason we're getting onto this topic, and if you didn't know, I think they're tied with France, but I think Canada has the most international players currently in the NBA. I think it's about 14 or 15 at this point. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, another great one, another great one that's going to be on this team. Let's.
But yes, I know. I think that is right. That is correct.
Dwight Powell, another good one. Ryerson's own Aaron Best. If he makes the team, I will be floored.
But this is, I don't think this would be Canada's team.
No, I don't think so. This is just the senior team of 2018. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's enough Canada basketball talk. I mean, we love to go all day. I love Andrew Nebar too, out of Florida. Oh, he's gonna be sweet. He's gonna be sweet. Okay, back to this Jimmy stuff. Wolves on the court. I think that Sarge and Covington are gonna give them some shooting. I think that's gonna really help a guy. And Derrick Rose playing at a 6th man of the year level right now.
Yeah, he really is.
And he dropped 50.
Hats off to D-Rose.
Yeah, hats off to D-Rose, which is great. I mean, they're going to get Jeff Teague back. It's possible for this team maybe to make a few more moves on the buyout market if they really want to make the playoffs. And Tibbs' job might depend on it.
They won't be there. Tibbs will be gone at the end of the year.
Yeah, he'll be gone.
Minnesota's going to have to start fresh again, and they're probably going to do something stupid and trade up a lot of stuff and get up for another superstar at some point.
That's
it's going to backfire.
Yeah, so maybe they don't make the playoffs or whatever, but. What if they go and flip those guys?
Flip who?
Saric, you can.
Saric is not a guy you're gonna want to flip.
You got pieces, and Josh Okogie, Keita Bates-Diop has been good for you, so you can afford to maybe let go of an expiring deal. I think Taj Gibson's on an expiring deal.
He is, yeah.
He could be let go. He could go to a contender perhaps, and maybe get back a low end first rounder. That could be an option here for the Timberwolves. It just
probably will be an option. You're right. That actually probably will happen. They'll get something for Taj Gibson. Taj Gibson will go somewhere at the deadline because Minnesota will be out of it.
Yeah.
I don't know who else is going to
They don't have a lot of cap space either. Sorry.
Jared Bayless, you're not getting much for.
Oh yeah, sorry. We haven't touched on Jared Bayless. He's an expiring deal. He's done. I don't think they're going to waive him.
They're not getting anything for him.
Yeah, exactly. Minnesota cap situation at the moment with the update again. I think it's Spotrac has the numbers. These are great numbers. Shout out to them. They are about $2 million. Oh wait, sorry. We're in 20. I was showing we were getting ahead of ourselves. Give 1 second here. Right now, they are over the cap. They have $3 million luxury tax space, so that means they are about $18 million over the cap.
Which isn't.
So basically you have to play with your exceptions. Again, when the exceptions are the rules at which you can sign and use players that do not count toward the salary cap. So these is what you're limited to. So they have a non-taxpayer level for $2 million. The full one of 8.6 was used on Anthony Tolliver and Keita Bates-Diop. And then you have your biannual exception, which they have available for $3.3 million. So they can use both of those tools to possibly add players or to maybe to take on bad salary. We'll see how they want to play it. I mean, I think they want to get out of the luxury tax for this team. I can't imagine ownership.
This
Glenn
team
Taylor
is
will
going to want to rebuild. They're in rebuild.
Yeah, they're in rebuild. So confirming that they want out of the luxury tax. Oh my goodness, they're still paying Kevin Martin. He's still got a $1.3 million figure. My goodness.
Love it.
That's unbelievable. This I kind of agree with you. I just don't think that they're going to being Saric and Covington are going to give them enough. The Timberwolves, I think, are in the bottom of the league on defense with Tibbs as your coach. I mean, what more talent do you need? Like, you know what I mean? Like I know Towns is the best defender. Wiggins is certainly not a great defender, but I mean. I know he's a personnel not there, but man, you gotta believe, his schemes are so old. It seems like, you know what I mean. It seems like he's playing in 2005, and we're in 2018.
There is a bit of that, and there's also a bit of
almost 2019.
This isn't a knock on Minnesota's players necessarily, but this is part of the reason why Jimmy was pissed. There's not a whole lot of effort.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what defense is. Defense, there's being long, being athletic. There are things that help. But the number one thing with defense is effort. Exactly. At the end of the day, you know what I mean? So
totally agree.
Hey, maybe the players aren't giving enough effort. Jimmy sure thought they weren't.
Well, there was a report that they were
Jimmy didn't really have a huge problem with the players. No,
it was more ownership.
Upper
it was more ownership. Yeah. I agree. But there was a report that after this whole third stringers thing happened, that he caught I think some of the. I think it was the starters laughing, giggling, it's easy to understand why Jimmy Butler doesn't want to be a part of watching guys laugh at just getting killed.
Exactly.
Jimmy Butler's not wired like that. That's going to make him sick. You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. So that's what it is. All right, we did about 28 minutes on this. I mean, I guess overall thoughts. Sixers. They definitely. It was a worthwhile gamble for this team.
For the Sixers, 100%. They win this. They win this trade.
Yes, I agree.
Right now.
And they still have a lot of cap space. They still have a lot of cap space too. I believe. I think they still have room to sign other guys. Let me just check the Sixers cap space at the moment. I think. They're just $2 million over the cap, so they're $19 million under the luxury tax, so they've got plenty of room here. They got the room exception still, full room exception, and they've got a $2.5 million trade exception that was created with the Dario Saric trade with Minnesota. So we'll see what they do. Again, probably going to add some shooting, but again, still some flexibility here for Philadelphia moving forward, and you get a major upgrade in Jimmy Butler, despite some of the shooting concerns that I have, but am not necessarily too worried about. Just want to see it before I believe it. Just a nice thing to point out. Exactly. On the Minnesota side, again, I think we discussed it. Don't think that Sarge and Covington are going to be enough to push them into the 8 seed this year. And that's, again, we discussed on what that means about Towns and Wiggins and what we feel about that. And Tibbs is on his way out the door. This team is, deep in the luxury. Well, not deep in the luxury tax, but into the luxury tax and almost at the apron. So they're going to look to dump salary again. A guy like Taj Gibson, who's not going to come. Yep. We don't think will come back, and a couple others. So we'll see what they do on there, and I guess Minnesota, if not making the playoffs, will be judged on their savviness, if you will, to be able to put together.
See how they can rebuild from this
Correct.
Butler
Put together
deal.
first round. Put together possibly a late first round pick, and maybe get and possibly make some moves to get off some expiring contracts to be able to get that. So I think that's their best move, especially considering they have limited cap space.
And it's interesting to see how is Minnesota going to maneuver their way out of this Butler fiasco, because it may have set them back a while. They need to really be smart with it, because it could really. They're at the point right now I think they went the wrong way with the deal personally. I think they should have went for more in the future and just kind of said, you know what, we're not in win now mode, because I don't think they really are. Although with their personnel, they might think they are. We're about to see what happens. Basically, bottom line, we'll see what happens.
For sure. I just want to see if we got the Timberwolves picks going forward, just to see what they have. They don't tell me what they got here, because I think they have most of their own picks here going forward, if I'm not mistaken. They got their own first round pick here, and they've got the Heat's, and they've got a plethora of second round picks here with a bunch of different exceptions and different whether or not they convey or depending on records and stuff like that. There's a lot of that in here from Kings, Blazers, Hawks, Cavs, Heat. So I don't want to go through all that. That's too much here. We got a half hour on it already. So thanks for joining us here on another episode of the Isoball Podcast. Hope you enjoyed our breakdown of the Butler trade from both Minnesota and the Sixers side. We'll see how this year goes going forward, but been pretty exciting so far. Last thing I want to ask you, what's been your favorite part so far about this year?
Siakam.
Pascal Siakam. I love it. As a Raptor fan, I love that too. And I already outlined exactly how good he's been this year on the last pod, so we won't get into it. But thanks for joining us again, and we'll see you in good time for another update soon. Till then, thanks for having us.